You know that feeling when your mind won't shut up. When you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning and your brain decides it's the perfect time to replay every embarrassing moment from the last decade, predict every possible disaster that could happen tomorrow, and convince you that everyone secretly hates you. Yeah, that feeling. That's the anxiety trap. And if you're watching this video right now, chances are you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about anxiety and negative thoughts. They're not actually the problem. The real problem is that you've been trying to fight them the wrong way this entire time, and that fight is what's keeping you stuck. So if you're tired of being a prisoner in your own mind, if you're exhausted from battling the same thoughts over and over again, and if you're ready to actually break free instead of just managing or coping, then stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you is going to completely change the way you understand your own mind and finally give you the tools to escape this trap permanently. Let me start by telling you what the anxiety trap actually is, because most people don't realize they're in it until someone points it out. The anxiety trap is a self-reinforcing cycle that starts with a negative thought, which triggers anxiety, which makes you try to control or eliminate the thought, which actually strengthens it, which creates more anxiety, which makes you fight harder, which makes everything worse. It's like quicksand for your mind. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. And the truly insidious part is that every strategy you've been taught to deal with negative thoughts, every technique you've tried, every piece of advice from well-meaning friends or therapists, most of it has actually been feeding this trap and making it stronger. Think about what you do when a negative thought pops into your head. Maybe it is something like, "I'm going to fail at this," or "nobody really likes me," or "something terrible is going to happen." What's your first instinct? For most people, it's to push the thought away, to tell yourself to stop thinking like that, to try to replace it with a positive thought, or to analyze why you're thinking this way so you can fix it. And all of these responses feel productive. They feel like you're doing something about the problem. But here's what's actually happening. Every time you engage with a negative thought as if it's a threat that needs to be neutralized, you're sending a message to your brain that this thought is dangerous and important. You're teaching your brain that these thoughts matter, that they need to be taken seriously, and that they require your immediate attention and energy. Your brain is an incredibly efficient machine, and it's designed to help you survive. So when you consistently treat certain types of thoughts as threats, your brain says, "Okay, these thoughts are important for survival. I need to make sure this person notices them and deals with them. So I'm going to make these thoughts louder, more frequent and more intense." This is why the thoughts you fight the hardest are the ones that keep coming back the strongest. This is why trying not to think about something makes you think about it more. This is why positive affirmations often backfire and make you feel worse. This is why all your attempts to control your thoughts have left you feeling more out of control than ever. The anxiety trap is built on a fundamental misunderstanding about what thoughts actually are and what they mean. We've been conditioned to believe that our thoughts are truths, that they reflect reality, that they reveal something important about us or our future, and that we need to either believe them or disprove them. But thoughts are not truths. They're just mental events, electrochemical signals firing in your brain, and they have exactly as much power as you give them. The thought "I'm going to fail" doesn't mean you're going to fail. It doesn't mean you're a pessimist. It doesn't mean you lack confidence. It doesn't mean anything except that your brain generated a sentence with those words in it. That's it. But we've been taught to analyze our thoughts, to figure out where they came from, to determine if they're rational or irrational, to challenge them with evidence. And all of this analysis keeps us trapped because it keeps us engaged with the thoughts as if they matter. Let me give you an analogy that makes this clearer. Imagine you're standing on the side of a busy highway watching cars drive past. Some cars are red, some are blue, some are trucks, some are motorcycles. Now imagine that you decide certain types of vehicles are bad and you need to stop them from driving past. So every time you see a red car, you run into the highway trying to stop it, trying to convince it to turn around, trying to understand why there are so many red cars on this highway. What happens? You get exhausted. You create chaos, you probably get hurt, and the red cars keep coming anyway because you're not actually in control of what vehicles use this highway. Your thoughts are like those vehicles. They're going to keep coming, all different kinds, and the ones you run after and fight with are the ones that end up causing you the most problems, not because they're inherently more dangerous than the others, but because of how you're relating to them. So if fighting thoughts doesn't work, if analyzing them doesn't work, if trying to replace them with positive thoughts doesn't work, what does? The answer is simpler than you think, but harder than you'd like. You need to change your relationship with your thoughts entirely. Instead of trying to control what thoughts appear, you need to learn to let them appear without engaging with them. Instead of treating thoughts as problems to solve, you need to see them as temporary mental events that don't require your response. Instead of believing that certain thoughts are dangerous or meaningful, you need to recognize that they're all just thoughts, and none of them have power unless you give it to them. This is where most people push back and say, "But you don't understand. My thoughts are different. My anxiety is worse. My negative thoughts are based on real problems. I can't just ignore them." And I get it. I really do, because I've been there. But here's what you need to understand. The content of your thoughts is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if your negative thoughts are about your health, your relationships, your finances, your past, your future, or your self-worth. It doesn't matter if they seem completely irrational or if they're based on legitimate concerns. The mechanism of the anxiety trap is the same regardless of what your thoughts are about, and the way out is the same too. Let me break down the actual process of breaking free from this trap permanently. The first step is recognition without reaction. This means you need to start noticing when negative thoughts appear, without immediately doing something about them. Most people are so used to instantly reacting to their thoughts that they don't even realize there's a gap between a thought appearing and their response to it. But that gap exists, and learning to widen it is the key to everything. When a negative thought pops up, your job is simply to notice it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to disprove it. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to make it go away. You just notice it like you'd notice a cloud passing by in the sky. This sounds easy, but it's not, because your brain has been trained through years of practice to immediately engage with certain types of thoughts. The moment a worry appears, you start problem solving. The moment a self-critical thought shows up, you start defending yourself or beating yourself up. The moment an anxious prediction pops in, you start analyzing the likelihood or preparing for disaster. These reactions are so automatic that they feel like part of the thought itself, but they're not. They're separate, and you can learn to insert space between the thought and your reaction to it. The way you do this is by labeling your thoughts without judgment. When a negative thought appears, you simply note it. There's an anxious thought, there's a self-critical thought, there's a worrying thought. You're not saying the thought is bad or wrong, you're just acknowledging what it is, and then you let it be there without doing anything else. The second step is understanding that discomfort is not danger. This is crucial because the main reason people stay trapped in the anxiety cycle is that they're trying to avoid the uncomfortable feelings that come with negative thoughts. Anxiety feels terrible. It creates physical sensations like a racing heart, tight chest, shallow breathing. And your brain interprets these sensations as evidence that something is wrong and needs to be fixed immediately. But here's the truth. Discomfort is not the same as danger. Anxiety cannot actually hurt you. The feelings are unpleasant, yes, but they're not harmful. They're just sensations, and like all sensations, they come and go. When you're willing to feel anxious without trying to make the anxiety stop, something remarkable happens. The anxiety loses its power over you. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy trying not to feel anxious, and this avoidance is what keeps the anxiety trap locked in place. You avoid situations that might trigger anxiety. You engage in mental gymnastics to talk yourself down from anxious thoughts. You seek reassurance from others. You distract yourself. And all of these strategies work temporarily, which is why you keep using them. But they also teach your brain that anxiety is something dangerous that must be prevented at all costs. This makes your brain more sensitive to anything that might trigger anxiety, which means you end up feeling anxious more often, and the cycle continues. The way out is counterintuitive. You have to be willing to feel the anxiety without trying to fix it. You have to let it be there, notice what it feels like in your body, breathe with it, and trust that it will pass on its own because it always does. The third step is diffusion, which refers to the process of separating yourself from your thoughts. Most people are fused with their thoughts, meaning they experience their thoughts as reality, or as an extension of themselves. When you're fused with the thought, "I'm a failure," you feel like you are a failure. The thought and your identity become one thing. Diffusion means creating distance between you and your thoughts so that you can see them as separate from who you are. One method is to add the phrase "I'm having the thought that" before your negative thoughts. Instead of "I'm going to fail," you think "I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail." This small shift reminds you that you're the observer of your thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. Another diffusion technique is to imagine your thoughts as things outside of you. You can visualize them as words on a screen, as leaves floating down a stream, as passengers on a bus you're driving. The specific metaphor doesn't matter. What matters is that you're practicing seeing your thoughts as separate from you. When you can look at a thought and say, "Oh, there's that thought again," rather than, "Oh no, this thought must be true," you've achieved diffusion. And that's when the thought loses its grip on you. The fourth step is redirecting your attention intentionally. This is different from distraction. Redirection is about choosing where to put your attention based on what matters to you, not based on what your anxiety is telling you to do. When you notice a negative thought and choose not to engage with it, you need to put your attention somewhere else, and that somewhere else should be something meaningful to you. This might be focusing on the task in front of you, connecting with someone you care about, or simply being present with whatever is happening in this moment. The key is that you're not redirecting your attention to escape discomfort. You're redirecting it to live your life, and you're willing to take the discomfort along with you. This is where acceptance becomes important. Acceptance doesn't mean liking your negative thoughts or resigning yourself to suffering. It means acknowledging that negative thoughts and uncomfortable feelings are part of being human, and you can have them without letting them control your choices. You can feel anxious and still go to that social event. You can have the thought that you're not good enough and still pursue your goals. You can experience doubt and still take action. Acceptance is about expanding your capacity to feel discomfort while doing what matters to you. Now let's talk about why this approach actually works on a neurological level. Your brain has a structure called the amygdala that acts as your alarm system. When it detects something it thinks might be dangerous, it triggers the fight or flight response. The amygdala can't tell the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. When you react to a negative thought by trying to fight it, you're confirming to your amygdala that there really was something to be afraid of. But when you notice a negative thought, acknowledge it without reacting, and continue with what you were doing, something different happens. Your amygdala sounds the alarm, but then nothing bad actually happens. Your brain takes note of this, and over time, the amygdala starts to learn that these thoughts are not actually dangerous. This process is called habituation. Let me address common obstacles people face. The first obstacle is that this feels like doing nothing, and doing nothing feels wrong when you're anxious. You're used to fighting, analyzing, problem-solving, and all of those strategies feel active. Just noticing your thoughts feels passive and scary, but remember, fighting your thoughts is what's been keeping you trapped. The second obstacle is that it gets harder before it gets easier. When you first start practicing this approach, you might actually feel more anxious for a while because you're breaking old patterns and allowing yourself to feel discomfort you've been avoiding. This temporary increase in discomfort is a sign you're doing it right. The third obstacle is perfectionism. You're going to get caught up in negative thoughts sometimes. That's normal. The practice is about noticing when you're caught and gently unhooking yourself without judgment. Let's talk about practical exercises you can start today. The first exercise is the 5-minute rule. For 5 minutes a day, sit quietly and observe your thoughts without engaging with them. Imagine you're sitting by a river and your thoughts are leaves floating by. Notice each thought, watch it float past and let it go. The second exercise is anxiety exposure. Make a list of situations you've been avoiding because they might trigger anxiety. Pick something moderately anxiety-provoking and deliberately put yourself in that situation. The goal is to feel the anxiety and stay in the situation anyway, proving to your brain that you can handle discomfort. The third exercise is values-based action. Identify what matters to you in life and take at least one action daily that aligns with your values, regardless of what thoughts or feelings are present. Here's something important. Breaking free from the anxiety trap does not mean you'll never have negative thoughts again. What it means is that thoughts and feelings will no longer control your life. They'll still show up, but they won't trap you anymore because you'll know how to relate to them differently. The goal is not to have a quiet mind or feel calm all the time. The goal is to have a flexible relationship with your inner experience so you can pursue what matters regardless of what's happening in your head. One of the most powerful shifts that happens when you practice this consistently is that you stop being afraid of your own mind. Right now, a big part of your anxiety is probably anxiety about anxiety. You're trapped not just by the thoughts themselves, but by your fear of what will happen if you have those thoughts. But when you practice allowing thoughts and feelings without fighting them, you gather evidence that you can handle them. This realization is incredibly liberating because it means there's nothing in your own mind that you need to be afraid of. Let me share what life looks like on the other side of the anxiety trap. You still have negative thoughts, but they don't stop you from doing things. You still feel anxiety sometimes, but it doesn't feel like an emergency. You have more energy because you're not spending all day fighting with your mind. You have more freedom because you're not avoiding situations that might trigger uncomfortable thoughts. You develop a confidence based on knowing you can handle whatever shows up. This makes you more resilient, more willing to take risks, more able to grow. You stop needing everything to go perfectly because you know that even when things are hard, you'll be okay. This is not a quick fix. This is a practice that you do consistently over time. Some people notice shifts within weeks, others take months. But this actually works if you stick with it. This is about fundamentally changing your relationship with your internal experience, so you're never trapped again. Let me simplify the core principles. First, thoughts are just thoughts, not truths. Second, fighting thoughts makes them stronger. Third, notice thoughts without engaging with them. Fourth, discomfort is not dangerous. Fifth, live according to your values regardless of what thoughts are present. If you can internalize these principles and practice them consistently, you will break free from the anxiety trap. So here's what I want you to do after watching this video. Start with the 5-minute observation exercise today. Make your list of situations you've been avoiding and commit to exposing yourself to one this week. Identify your values and take one action in alignment with them today. And most importantly, the next time you notice a negative thought or anxious feeling, resist the urge to do what you've always done. Instead, pause, notice the thought, acknowledge the feeling, and choose to continue without engaging with the content of the thought. Just that one moment of choosing differently is the beginning of breaking free. And then you do it again the next time, and the next time, and gradually you rewire your brain and reclaim your freedom. You are not broken and you don't need to be fixed. You just need to learn a different way of relating to your mind, and now you have the roadmap to do exactly that. The trap has kept you stuck for long enough. It's time to break free.